Hi there, Thor owners. Today on your 2015 Thor 4 Winds Super C motorhome, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install Roadmaster's rear anti-sway bar. All right, so we're in our customer's vehicle here. I just took it over our bumps course here. We didn't even make it to the slalom section with how much we got rocking. I really don't feel comfortable taking this thing out on the slalom section. So we're gonna go ahead and get it in the shop. We're gonna look it over too, make sure there's no any damaged components. And if everything looks okay with the factory equipment, we'll go ahead and get it swapped out with the newer bar and hit this course, and hopefully I'll feel comfortable driving it then. So we're gonna hit our test course now so we can see how it feels in comparison to our old one. When I drove it over the test course pulling it into the shop, it had a lot of rocking back and forth and it felt pretty uncomfortable to the point where I really didn't want to take it into the slalom section. So now that we've got it upgraded here, we're gonna hit our test course on our bumps course once again and see how it feels. We're gonna start in the uneven section, which is gonna simulate a pothole, and then we'll do the even section after that, which would simulate like a speed bump. And so far here in our uneven section, it does feel like we've got a little bit more stability than we've had before. It really got rocking quite a bit on the course, but where we're at now, it has substantially reduced the amount of rocking that we've had. So we're just gonna get on around into the next section here. Yeah, it really did make a drastic difference in our bump section here. A lot more than I normally feel when I'm doing a replacement sway bar upgrade. And then in our even bump section here, we don't normally see a huge difference here, just because if you're hitting a straight bump, like a speed bump, completely dead on, it doesn't throw your vehicle left or right. It's more of just a forward and aft kind of movement, just going over the bump. So we don't notice much change there, but that's pretty normal. So we're gonna head down to the slalom section now, where before I was really uncomfortable driving the motorhome. So let's see how it compares now. So I do feel a lot more confident after going over our bumps course there. All right, so now that we're into the open area here, we're just gonna mimic an evasive maneuver here. And it does still have some rocking. It feels like it rocks more to the right just a little bit than the left, so I'm suspecting there's probably a bit of an uneven amount of weight distribution here in this vehicle. It is definitely an improvement over what we had before. I feel comfortable enough to drive it in the course this time. We had a little bit of speed in there. I would say this motorhome probably could still benefit from additional suspension enhancements to further increase the confidence when driving it, especially when making a right turn there. It really threw the weight. It seemed a lot harder to the one side. So probably in addition to a rear sway bar on something like this, I would recommend a front sway bar to help supplement it further. And then you can also get sumo springs here at each trailer, which help to prevent sway by adding big dampeners on each side. They're kind of very similar to like a jounce bumper, but they provide contact the whole time. So they also smooth out your ride, help to support some extra weight, and also help smooth out, reduce some of that sway, because they work together with that as well. All those things together really do a great job of taming these big motorhomes. So this bar upgrade here is a first step and has made quite a big difference here. And this is what our sway bar looks like when it's installed. It's going to be a direct replacement for your factory sway bar, but this is going to be a much larger, heavier duty, more robust sway bar than your factory one was. It's very, very thick in comparison. It seems to be nearly about twice the diameter of what the factory one was. And the main purpose of our sway bar here, if we look how it's attached, it's secured to our axle here with our bushing clamps, and then the ends of our arm here head out to the end links, which are attached to the frame of the vehicle. So what this does for us is our sway bar here, this big thick hunk of metal that is bent in this particular way, been molded already, it wants to stay in the position that it has been molded in. So it's kind of hanging out like this with its arms going forward, and it doesn't want to move. But these end links here, these are attached to the body of the vehicle. And our axle here, this is pretty much always going to be planted on the ground. You know, your wheels are pretty much always going to be on the ground. So while our wheels are here on the ground, our body's here above it. And the things between the two that's connecting these two together is pretty much our end links right there. So as we take maybe a heavy right turn, we turn real hard to the right, maybe we're performing an evasive maneuver. Well, our axle here is still going to be planted on the ground, but as we turn to the right, our body's going to want to sway like that, because the vehicle's moving this way, momentum's, things don't want to move that are kind of at rest. They were already in that position, so it starts to sway this direction. So our body's going this way. You can see how this side here is now closer to our axle, and this side over here is now further away from our axle. Our end link here is pulling up on this bar, and on the opposite side it's pushing down on that arm towards our axle. So it's doing kind of like this. Our sway bar is now twisted like this, and it doesn't want to twist. It's going to snap back down to bring our vehicle back upright. It wants to remain in that normal resting position. So that works in all sway direct for both left and right, whichever way the vehicle's going to sway. This is going to help to prevent that from happening, because again, it doesn't want to twist, and then if it does happen to twist, it wants to return itself back upright. So it's going to minimize the amount that our vehicles can sway to both the left and the right. And then as you do sway to the left, you've got that momentum build up when you return back to center, and sometimes you go beyond center and sway the other direction, and you kind of work yourself back out, kind of back and forth until it straightens up. A bigger, more robust sway bar is going to reduce how much we go back and forth, reduce the amount of oscillations back and forth we have, and just overall provide a more comfortable ride for our passengers and give you more control over your motorhome and any of those evasive maneuvers, or when you're hitting potholes or going over speed bumps, any of those things, you're just going to have more control. This is going to result in less energy being wasted when you're driving your motorhome, because you're not having to compensate so much. And it's going to allow you to enjoy the things that you want to do when you get to your wherever you're planning on camping or staying for the night, since you weren't wasting that energy on the road. That might make the difference of being able to get everything unpacked so you can enjoy yourself in the morning versus having to do the unpacking in the morning because you were so tired the night you arrived. We'll begin our installation underneath the vehicle here just in front of the rear axle. Now we're going to be using our lift here, but if you look at our lift, it supports the vehicle by the tires, because we do need this to be loaded when we're going to be installing our sway bar, and removing it's also a lot easier while the suspension is loaded as well, because that way our sway bar is in its normal resting position, so there's no stresses, bindings, or loads that's currently on it. So just grab yourself a creeper and roll underneath. If you have some ramps, you can drive it up on ramps. Just make sure you do know the weight capacity of those ramps, because these motorhomes are pretty heavy and you don't want to exceed the capacity of any ramps you're going to be driving it up on. So now we'll head underneath and get our old sway bar removed. So we're going to start here with the end link. You'll have one of these on each side of your factory sway bar, which is located here. You can see just kind of rotates right up above the axle there. It's attached just behind our shocks. We're going to start by getting the end link nuts removed. So we're going to grab an 18mm socket and zip that off of there. Now this stud here sometimes may want to spin. If that's the case, you can put a pair of like channel locks or something on it to grab it to prevent it from spinning. But in most cases, it shouldn't really want to spin on you. So we're going to go ahead and head over to the other side and get the nut removed on that side as well. Make sure you save your nut, because we are going to be reusing it. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to get our shock kind of moved out of the way here, because our sway bar, really the only thing left holding it in there is our bushing caps that are here on the other end. We have one on each side, and both of our bushing caps are located right behind the shock that you see there. And the top bolt here is going to be easy to remove, but the other bolt here right behind the shock is so close to the shock that it will contact the shock before you'll be able to unthread the bolt. So we're just going to take this lower shock bolt loose here on the shock, and that'll let us just kind of pivot it out of the way just enough to be able to get that bolt out of there. So we're going to remove this bolt here on bottom. You're going to use a 15mm wrench to hold the bolt, and we're going to use our 18mm socket to take the nut off of there. I have been spraying a lot of this hardware too, since this vehicle is pretty old now. It's about 7 years. So corrosion and debris, dirt debris and all that stuff starts to set in and make a lot of your hardware fasteners more difficult to remove. So a little bit of rust penetrant can help ease the removal of your fasteners. All right, so we'll zip that off of there. Now, once you take the bolt here loose, the shock is going to want to extend. It's no big deal that it extends. You should be strong enough that you can push the shock back up in there to reinstall the bolt at a later time. Just be aware of it, because it is going to move. Try to keep your fingers away from stuff. It's going to want to kind of pop out of there. So I'm going to push up a little bit. That way you can see that I can hold the force of the shock back. Pull your bolt out of there, and you can see here it starts to extend a little bit. And this is enough right here to where we'll be able to remove our bolt. So it should be just fine. If you wanted to, you could also take this bolt out here for the parking brake cable. That would allow you to swing it away a little bit further. We're going to leave it just due to being a little bit older. If you don't have to take it out, Usually you're better off not taking it out because any of these bolts at any point then could be rusted and seized up in there. We don't want to have to deal with an extra problem if we don't have to. So now we're going to move on to removing these. Both of these up here, we're going to grab our 15mm wrench and get those out of there. The top one here we can probably do with a socket and get to, but this one you're going to need a wrench. All right, and that'll just slide out of there. We're going to remove the top one the same way. And once we get this side out, we're going to go over to the other side and perform the same procedures over here to get that side removed. All right, so now that we've got all the hardware loose, really all we got to do is work it out of here. Now, I'm going to go ahead and take the caps off of the bushings. They just pull right off of there from behind there. They're just resting on it. We don't have any hardware on them. I'm mainly doing that just so they don't fall off while I'm trying to get it out of there, and also I don't want them to get hung up, because this is going to be a pretty tight feed to get this sway bar slid out of here, because there's a lot of weird curves in it and there are a lot of components here that we've got to avoid. So first thing you want to do is take your end links here. We've had them just kind of sitting in there. Pull back on those and slide those out of your sway bar. Sway bar now is ready to just kind of fall out of there, but we got to find the right angle that it's going to slide out. And I'm thinking it's going to be easiest here if we go over towards the driver's side like that, away from our exhaust. We've got our shocks loose already. So that parking brake cable and all this stuff over there probably makes it way easier to slide it out this side. But we've got it removed, and we're going to go ahead and set it down next to our new sway bar so we can compare the two real quick before we put the new one in, and then we'll get our new one installed. So here we've got our two sway bars side by side. You can see our new Roadmaster one here compared to our factory one. The Roadmaster one just really eclipses the factory one in size. I mean, it looks like it's almost twice the diameter of the factory one here. So it's got a lot more material here. There's a lot more force behind this bar. So when the events occur, that when sway starts to happen and this bar here starts to twist to prevent it, this one here is going to have so much more force there to prevent the twist and prevent the vehicle from swaying than our factory one. We do also get new bushings with our new bar here, which are going to be upgraded, heavier duty bushings than the ones that come here. But we will be reusing the same end links that are in place there. I would have liked to have seen some end links come with the kit, just because that is kind of a common fail point in sway bars, and not to a point where they fail where they don't function at all, but to a point where they start to make a little clunk noises. Those sway bars end links typically tend to be a noisy component. But anyway, we can go ahead and get this one in here. I didn't feel any damage with the current end links that are in there. It just would have been nice to be able to put everything brand new in all at once. So let's just grab our parts and get them back together. Next, we're going to install the bushings. We just kind of spoke about them a little bit here. We're going to use the lubricant that comes included with the kit inside of our bushings. Now, some customers have indicated that the lubricant here can cause irritation on their skin. I've not noticed it here myself, but everybody's skin is different. So if you think that you need to wear some latex gloves to protect yourself, definitely do so at home. So we're going to go ahead and just grab a generous amount of it out of there. We're going to put it inside of our bushing, and we're going to lubricate it all the way around. And we want to do this on both sides of the interior of our bushing here. So if you got plenty of that on that first grab of grease, you can just flip it over to the other side and make sure it's fully coated on the inside there. Now, after you've fully coated the inside, you might have a little bit of grease left on your finger. We don't want a lot of grease on the outside of our bushing, but a little tiny bit here on the outside, just what you got left kind of here on your finger, can help minimize any rattles or squeak noises that you can get. So we're just going to take that little bit we got left and just smear that on there. But again, we don't want too much. Don't slather that up real heavy. We'll then open this up. It is a split bushing, so you can spread it open, and we're going to slide it right here onto the end of our bar. Now that'll have to slide back and forth as necessary to line up with our vehicle. I'm not 100% sure on the spot, but it's definitely going to be in between these two places, and we can easily slide this back and forth here. We're now going to prepare our other bushing the same way and slide it on the other side. So we've got our new sway bar prepared. We're going to go ahead and feed it back into position. We want to have it in the same orientation as the one we removed, so we need it to, you can see how it's got this relief here to go over your differential. We still need that relief to go over the differential just like that. So the Roadmaster sticker is going to be upside down on this particular one. But the most important thing is that the bar clears all the components. So we're just going to feed it in reverse order of how we took the other one out. right, once we get it in there, we're gonna try and get the end links slid through the end. So that'll help hold it in place for us. Get that one slid through. And then we can get this one slid through. And that'll help hold it there for us a little bit. We can just get a nut started on each side. Next, we're gonna grab our end caps, set those in place over our bushing, line up the holes in your bushing caps with the factory weld nuts, and then just reinstall your hardware. Once we've got all of our hardware loosely installed on all our caps and on our ends, you can just go ahead and center your sway bar. So we're just kind of centering this right here over our differential. Tap it back and forth as necessary. It should slide in your caps, and then once you tighten them down, it helps to hold it in that position. This looks pretty centered right here though, so we're just gonna run it back down. It's all the same factory hardware that secures our new one here, so you're gonna use all the same size tools to reinstall all the fasteners. And snug up your end links as well. We'll now reinstall our shock. You can see there, you just push upwards on it, line it up with the hole, slide your bolt through, and reinstall your nut. And then we can just snug that down. And we'll do the same for our other shock over here. And now that we've got all of our hardware tightened down, at this point we just want to test drive the vehicle, make sure we don't hear any clunks or noises. If you do hear any kind of clunk or noise, some of your fasteners may not be fully secured, just head back down there and make sure you got them all properly tightened. And that completes our installation of Roadmaster's rear anti-sway bar on our 2015 Thor 4Winds Super C motorhome.